Phantasm, the delusion of a disordered mind, a phantom, a spirit, a ghost. For 10 years, the secret of Perigord Cemetery has remained a mystery. Now, 3 innocent people are about to discover the ultimate evil.
You think that when you die, you go to heaven. You come to us.
We've got to warn people.
This summer, the ball is back. Phantasm 2.
It's only a dream.
It's a dream.
No, it's not.
Rated R.
Welcome back, everyone, to Late to the Party. We're a bunch of dudes, and usually Dudette, but she's not here this time, review old movies, minimum of 10 years old. And today we have kind of a flashback. So we select these movies on the Wheel of Wonder here. And the wheel choices last week were all sequels to movies we have previously reviewed. So the winner on the wheel was ironically probably one of the top 3 worst movies that we agreed in unison was pretty bad. So it was Phantasm 2. Phantasm 2 was released July 8th, 1988, and it stars Reggie Bannister as Reggie, Angus Scrimm as the Tall Man, James LeGros as Mike, Paula Irvine as Liz, and Sam Phillips as Alchemy. It's got a 6.5 out of 10 review from IMDb, 40% on Rotten Tomatoes, 3.2 out of 5 on Letterboxd, and I haven't found anything for it on Walmart.com.
That's the Scots area. They usually got that for us.
Yeah, they got Walmart.com unlocked for us. So this one was one of our original horror movies from I want to say leading into about this time last year was when we were doing our horror kick. And it started with, let's see, Hellraiser, and then Phantasm, and then Poltergeist, and then we kind of went, that was what we did for horror at the time. All of which had varying levels of excitement and disappointment for everyone. I think these were back before Lego went on his 10 streak. So all of those movies all got he wasn't looking to find the artistic quality of the palette of the director's nephew or whatever during those times. It was just honest reviews coming from Lego. So needless to say, a lot of those movies, I think that was before we were choosing together. I was just putting up my old favorites, and a lot of those movies, like the theme of this show, didn't hold up with time. But Phantasm, I want to say Phantasm and Hellraiser especially did not hold up, at least the originals. And then I had remembered that when I watched those movies, I didn't see them in the theater. I saw them, my cousin, who was a big horror fan, brought the movies home from the video store, the VHSs home from the video store, like in triplicate. So we would watch a binge of all of those movies, and I would remember them in a bunch. So I want to say the first question for you guys is if you can remember how the last movie was and this movie, do you think that as a kid you would have been able to watch it and put them together to be a better movie than just having seen it the way we saw it? We'll start with Isaac.
So if I was to watch it the way you originally watched it, was 1, 2, and 3, I would have probably enjoyed it as much because you get it all right there. But the way we watched it was, we saw the first one that was slow as shit, It was not fun. It took forever to get to the excitement. And then this one was like right off the back, just excitement, explosions, people getting the ball stuck in their head. We got boobies here, boobies there. It was a great movie for a kid. If I would have seen 1, 2, and 3 all at the same time, for sure, I would have enjoyed it. But the way we saw it here, well, of course, we didn't like the first one. The second one, it was much more enjoyable and a lot more fast paced. So I can see why you thought it was a good movie, because you saw it back to back to back to back.
Okay. Same question, Lego.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to kind of just restate what Isaac just said, but yeah, I think one was really slow, and I was kind of struggling to really remember what even happened like in the first one. I was like, it was so boring, and my mind pushed it out. So this time around, having it having the more action and all that, it made a lot more concrete impression. And I think this one really held up a lot better, I would say, than the first one.
For sure. And lastly, I would say Jose, but there is no Jose. Oh, there he is. All right, Jose, you got that question?
Yeah, most of it. It was does it make more sense as a kid or to watch it all together?
Like how do you think that if you would have watched these movies all together, as opposed to watching one and then the other like we watched it, it would have been more?
Yeah, I haven't watched the third one, but if it's anything like the second one, it's definitely a lot more. It keeps your attention. That's for sure. But I think this is one of those movies, series where it benefits from having the entire thing already done, so people can go back and watch it back to back to back. Well, at least one after the other. It's kind of like having a Lord of the Rings marathon, like have the whole thing all as one conclusive piece. The second one's cool. It was better than the first, but and I say that lightly, but the first one just left such a bad taste in your mouth that the second one you're already dreading, like, why the hell am I doing this to myself? Like, why would I want to go through this? But once it's done, it's like ripping a Band-Aid off, like, all right, it's done, it's over with. And it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So it's the way I see this whole thing.
Okay, that's
not
cool.
As bad as it could have been.
Okay, for sure. So one of the things that we had talked about on our last video, and whoever feels led to talk about this, feel free to jump in, but we were talking about how the little orbs that flew through the air, seemed like it was supposed to be a prominent thing, and then it was very lightly went over in the first one, and just like, what even is that? What was it? And I think that they really were able to flesh that out. Not only flesh out the orbs, but flesh out the tall man. You understood where the midgets came from. It's like they took all the disjointed pieces from the other movie and they kind of almost retold the same story, but in a way that made sense. Do you guys feel like they did that the orbs were cool in this one, or that they lived up to the expectation that you had in the previous film?
Yeah, I was going to touch on that when I was talking about it. Yeah, the orbs made a bigger impact on this one than the first one. Like, there was 3 different orbs, and they were like showing what mechanisms they had and what they were doing. And then the little people, the Jawas, we saw where the Jawas came from instead of just popping out. Like, we figured out what was going on with them. So yeah, this was more of a more cohesive origin for everything for us to know, instead of just a dragging out movie with stuff just popping out, just being like, here, there's that, and it's like, what the hell's going on here?
For sure. So Anybody want to piggyback on that?
Yeah, I think so. One of the issues I think a lot of people have in horror movies is kind of like, once you show the bad guy, once you show the monster, it's not scary anymore, you know? This follow-up, I mean, we get all the, you know, all the villains, all the monsters, everything. And I don't think they're scary, but they do a really good job of being gory and kind of like fun, you know? It never really felt like a horror movie in the sense of like, this is pretty scary. It was just like, wow, this is like cool. It was more like going to like a Halloween store or something like that, rather than, you know, a graveyard. I think this one, compared to the first, really pumped the gas, and it worked out well.
Awesome. Anything to piggyback on that, Jose?
Same thing. I think it's definitely a product of its time. It's like Lego said. I think we remember talking about this back then. This came out during a time of like slasher films, right? So a lot of those dudes never really, you know, they had a very small origin, but they didn't spend much time kind of explaining it. I think the whole explaining an origin, you know, taking up 10, 15 minutes of a movie, I think that's modern. But I think that's why I think this movie was a little bit more like, oh, it looked like somebody saw this in modern time and went back and redid it using all of the effects of that time. It was weird. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, yeah,
my headspace was, I was like, wow, this is like if me and the guys had seen this and we're like, you know what, let's go back and let's tell a modern take of this using those effects, because why not? But yeah, I definitely see it. It is a product of its time. So, yeah, and it shows. So,
kind of jumping off there. I wanted to know if any of you guys noticed when the guy's in the incinerator room and he's like smashing up the corpse and all that, or the bones. He pours the ashes into a bag that says Mr. Sam Raimi, which is of course the director for Spider-Man and The Evil Dead and all that, which we did recently, Army of Darkness. And I was wondering if anybody else noticed that throughout this movie, Phantasm 2. I felt like there was a lot of Sam Raimi-esque moments, whether it was following the ball around or whatever. So I wanted to see if any of you guys picked up on that.
Oh yeah, for sure. It was actually, he was doing it to be an homage to Sam Raimi, and then even using the ball shot, it was almost like that Evil Dead chasing scene.
Yes.
You know, so yeah, it was pretty legit. I liked it.
Nice. Yeah, I kind of wished that was his name Reg, the bald dude with the sick mullet. Yeah. I wish
Hulk Hogan mullet.
Yeah, dude. I wished he was a little bit maybe more like a badass, more like Ash or something. But you could tell that he was definitely inspired by those Evil Dead films.
He actually comes back as pretty much a badass in the sequels to this.
Oh, cool.
They even
He doesn't die?
What's that?
Didn't die?
I mean,
I thought he died.
They're all over
No,
the
he just
place.
got tossed out of car.
Yeah, he got
He's
tossed out of
fine.
a car. He was bloody.
Okay. I thought he was like dead because he went.
Yeah, no, he lived. In fact, he becomes like the main protagonist. I think in some of the sequels, they bring back the kid who played Michael in the original movie. He's like, they made seven years pass by and had him grown up for this one. But in other sequels, when he actually does grow up, they bring that kid back.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So it's like, they're all over the place. I mean, it could be better, it could be worse, but I want to say that the leap, it's like that first one, it was obviously a project from film students that they were working on. They had a little bit of budget from school, and then this one, it seemed like they were able to flesh out their ideas, have a little bit more little bit more under their belt, a little bit more experience, and we're able to put, you know, something a lot more cohesive and better together. So I think we're all in. I'm glad you guys are kind of agreeing with me about this one, because I felt so stupid when we watched the first movie, and it was so horrible. I'm like, fuck, dude, I don't remember it being this bad. Like, I don't remember just these boobs being the only cool thing about this movie. You know, I do think that the girls were hotter in the second one. It looks like the ones that they found in the first one, they weren't too special. They were kind of like one level above Streetwalker, you know, for the first movie. So no, I'm glad that I at least got to get a little taste of redemption with this one. So that was cool for me.
It's the reverse effect of some of those other comedy movies that we watched, where what we thought, you know what, I remember this being a lot funnier, and you remember, wait a minute, I remember this not being as crappy. And it's like we went back and now watching, it's like, there it is. That's what it was.
I think with the comedies, I think moving forward, if I get a comedy, I'm going to make sure I grab a spouse or a kid or a buddy of some sort and try to watch it, not by myself. Because I think that's been the consensus. And when we watch these comedies, it's that when like something about being in a room full of somebody else who might be laughing just brings more joy to them. And maybe, you know, watching a horror movie, watching it with somebody else might bring some more fear to it as well. You never know. And it's probably part of the missed life experience of the theaters being, you know, so empty, you know, at this time, in at least in California. So that being said, let's roll to the buckets. We'll go with Jose first. What do you think, Jose? How many buckets on this one?
Well, judging it by itself, just as a standalone, not adding, you know, the first part to it, I wish I would have gone back and seen what I gave the first one, because I want to at least double it. But if I gave it a 5, then no, forget what I just said, because it's not a 10. That's for sure. Assuming I gave the first one a 3, maybe a 2, I'll go ahead and give this one a 6.
That's fair.
Yeah, it's better than the first one, but it's by no means something I'm gonna run out and recommend to anybody. But I think I'm you know, and mentioning the whole homage to Sam Raimi, I think when you're trying to pay a little bit of tribute or an homage, it forces you to do better work, because you're obviously trying to, you know, in a way thank, you know, whoever it is, the creative person, for giving you that influence, that inspiration, I mean. So I think by them kind of sticking to that and wanting Sam Raimi to be, you know, hey, that's cool, thank you guys, I appreciate that, you know, they had to kind of try and step their game up. So that's why it's not the worst one, but yeah.
Well, that's a fair score. All right, let's see. Isaac, what do you think?
I'll have to agree with Jose. I'm going to give it a 6 as well. It wasn't the greatest. It was a lot more action filled, and it had more grotesque moments. So a lot more enjoyable than the first. And I think I gave the first one like a 3. So yeah, I'll go with the 6. 6 popcorn buckets.
All right. Lego.
Well, I'm inclined to give it a 6 as well. Give the old mark of the beast.
So, the caveman gave it the mark of the beast. That's actually does the movie more credit than anything. Yeah.
Right. It was too tempting. I don't know, dude. This movie came out in 1988. I was born in 1988. That just proves that 88 was a good year for making gigantic piles of shit. This one, it was 100, like Jose said, at least double the enjoyment of the first one. I feel like I gave the first one way too high of a rating, but yeah, this is like a 6. If you cut out maybe the first like 20 minutes, it might be like a 7 or an 8, but there was some problems that made this not the most enjoyable, but I could see having a couple beers and watching it with friends and it being okay.
For sure. Yeah, I hate to be the fourth mark of the beast, but I'm gonna go ahead and put it in there as a 6 as well. Is the acting great? The acting isn't great, you know. I think that the villain and those spheres are fairly iconic as far as horror movies go. Like if you're an avid horror fan, you know who the Tall Man is, and you know about those spheres. So those things are, you know, they carry some influence into pop culture afterwards. So that was cool. It was a little bit of a redemption song. So, you know, I am interested, and we'll catch up with with our missing members, the Scots, next week and see what they thought about this movie. I'm excited to hear if they felt the same way about it or not. So Josh is not here this week, and he had a pretty ridiculous list of movies that I think we're in consensus that we're going to let him present, because y'all will see when the time comes. So we're going to be skipping right to Lego. Is it Lego, right?
Yep,
We'll skip to Lego this week, and we'll do an out of order and do Josh's picks next week, and he can present them himself, and those movies to seem like something that we're presenting to you, because they're very uniquely Josh, and I don't want to steal any of his thunder. So for our review of Phantasm 2 and for Late to the Party, we're going to be signing off. It's Nate the Great. We'll see you next week. Late to the Party.